Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this show with a friend. If you're listening to us on one of your favorite podcast platforms, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. My guest today is an award-winning playwright and screenwriter whose plays One of the Nice Ones, Los Angeles Drama Critics Circle Award for Best Playwriting, and Handjob were previously produced by the Echo Theater Company. His work has been developed by such theaters as Playwrights Arena, the LATC, the Actors Gang, Naked Angels, Mark Taper Forum, Provincetown Theater Company, and New Group, and have been nominated for Ovation Stage Raw, LA Weekly, and GLAAD Media Awards. His play, Fucking Strangers, opens July 18th at Echo Theater Company in Los Angeles and runs through August 24th. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Erik Patterson.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Likewise, thanks for coming out.
It's great to be here.
Lots going on in your playwriting career.
Yeah.
Before we get into all the goodness, what's your background? Where did you start in playwriting?
I originally thought I would be an actor.
Okay. Happens to the best of us, or the worst of us.
Yeah. I started acting when I was 10. I grew up in Orange County.
Okay.
And I took an acting class at South Coast Repertory in Orange County when I was 10. And then I acted through high school. I did a bunch of young conservatory productions as an actor at South Coast Rep. I actually acted when I was 15. I did a play with Will Ferrell before he had done Saturday Night Live at SCR. It was really fun. My memory of him was that he was the funniest person I've ever met.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I went to Occidental College here in Los Angeles, and my major was theater with an emphasis on acting. And then I took a playwriting class my senior year at Oxy with Laurel Mead. And I like to say she taught me everything I know because I shifted from acting to writing basically my senior year of college, and then I never looked back.
What do you think it was? What was the catalyst? What was the one thing, if you can pinpoint it? I don't know how far back that is. I mean, maybe 2 years ago.
It was 5 years ago. No, it was a while ago. It was a long time ago. I would say, I think acting for me, I realized at some point that my favorite part of acting was just the community and socializing and not actually doing the work and being on stage. And what I discovered after acting for about 15 years was that I loved storytelling and that I could find a different way into storytelling. And it didn't have to be the person saying the words, but actually coming up with the story itself was so much more satisfying.
Was there anything, was it something you wrote? Was it something you read? Was it a playwright that really resonated with you? I want to see if we can, what was it, and then how did you keep that flow going?
Yeah, I think my first favorite playwright was Christopher Durang.
Okay, sure.
And in college, I tried to write, actually Christopher Durang and Joe Orton.
Okay.
I loved both of them. And I would say, I don't think that my plays now are very Durangy or Orton-y, but I do think that
hopefully they're very Patterson-y.
They're very Patterson-y, yeah. But I tend to write about heavy subjects, but then I try to find the humor and the humanity in it. And I do think that I originally found that from Christopher Durang, and his work is definitely more absurd than what I do. But I do think that if you look at his plays, the reason they work is that you really fall in love with those characters, and they really are about connecting to them. And so, yeah, I read a lot of Durang and a lot of Orton, and I loved both of those writers. And in my senior year of college, I wrote a terrible play called Mammy Rammer, which is a British slang for motherfucker. And it was my attempt at a kind of Christopher Durang absurd sex comedy, and it was awful. But that was my first play. No one will ever read that play again. It is. I don't even think it exists anymore. I don't have the computer or the files. But that was my entry
Somebody
point.
out there that's listening is
yeah, we did some readings at Oxy, so maybe someone has a hard copy.
Do you remember what the not feedback, the response was there any response?
Yeah, I think people thought it was funny. I remember, I don't think anyone saw I think we did a reading of that play. No, I don't think anyone who saw that play would think, oh, he'll still be writing plays 25 years from now.
Sure, but at the same time, the response wasn't anything. It was like, well, I gave it a shot, and now that didn't work.
I definitely got some attention from it.
Okay.
Yeah, people liked it.
But you don't feel it was enough to, and I'm not putting you on the spot. Yeah. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just curious, why not? Why did you not push it further out there?
I think, because it was the first play I wrote, and I think it was bad, and I teach playwriting, and there are so many writers who will write one thing and then think, I've written a play and I'm a playwright now, and it's got to be produced everywhere. And they've put so much, their heart and soul into this one piece of work. But the reality is, you need to write more to get better, right? And so I often will tell people, okay, great, good work. Now write another one, and then write another one, and hopefully, get producer reading, get a workshop up, try to make things happen with that play. But just know that the more you write, the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And at some point, you're going to look back at this first play and you're going to say, oh, I was so silly. I really thought that was the best I can do. And you can do better, because the more we do it, writing is a muscle. It's like going to the gym. It's doing those reps, and sitting down and writing every day makes you better.
You said it really was a bad play. What makes a bad play?
Oh, it's a great question. What makes a bad play?
I mean, I know what I think makes a bad play, but I'm just curious in your mind, what makes a bad play?
I mean, a lot of things make a bad play. I think not having conflict on the stage makes a bad play.
Can you give an example?
Yeah.
I know I'm putting you on the spot if you listen to it.
Oh, like a specific example?
Maybe. I don't know, but
I'm not going to call anyone out. But
no, definitely not. I mean, there's been times I wanted to.
Yeah, you'll see a play that is not working, and it will be characters talking about the fight rather than having the fight.
Okay.
Put that fight on stage, and put that argument on stage, put that moment of revelation, put that twist on stage, put that moment where there's a reversal, where you discover something about your characters, where they say the thing they've never said before. Put it in the scene. So yeah, I think that a boring play is bad. I definitely look for spectacle. What is the theatrical choice? What is the moment of spectacle? What is the moment where the audience is going to lean forward and be waiting for the character to say that next thing that they know they're going to say? Or where is the gasp moment in the audience?
Do you think that the character knows what they're going to say? Or do you think it comes from that place of oh, fuck, I didn't know that's what I was going to say?
Absolutely. I think, finding those moments where they didn't intend to reveal the thing. Okay. Right? Yeah. Absolutely.
Can you define spectacle?
Yes. I personally would define spectacle as a moment of pure theatricality that cannot exist anywhere other than the stage. And some examples.
Yes, please.
The angel falling through the roof at the end of part 1 of Angels in America, right? Or not falling, crashing through the roof, right? And I've seen that production a couple of times, or I've seen that play a couple of times. The London production of that play, it was just a sound effect, and the lights shifted, and then there was a woman on stage with 4 puppeteers moving. She had these huge wings that took 4 puppeteers to operate, and they were just all dressed in black, and they were moving these huge wings, and it was this incredible image. And so there was nothing on stage, and then the lights went out. You hear this crash, the lights come back up, and then suddenly this angel is taking up the entire space. That was a moment of spectacle. The original production of Angels in America, the actor playing the angel was suspended in air.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And so that's also spectacle. She's flying. It looks like she's flying. You can see even if you can see the cord holding her up, we suspend that disbelief and we see someone flying. I read about a production where the angel was just on a ladder with wheels and they had someone pushing her around the stage, and things like that are kind of like homegrown spectacle.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You mentioned reversal. How do you achieve reversal? Or does that go back to, I know what I'm going to say, but oh no, that's not what I was going to say, and letting those things slip?
Yeah, I think.
Or can you define, not to make this a episode of definitions, if you will, but just, there's just some terminology that some of our listeners may not be familiar with, and I want to unpack those things as they come up.
I think of rehearsal as a moment when you think you are watching one thing and then you discover you are watching something else.
Okay.
Or maybe you think a relationship is this, and then you learn something and realize I've been looking at this the wrong way.
How do you keep writing? I mean, because obviously, you said it was a bad play, but yet you use that. You got enough feedback to where it was going to keep you going. Yeah. And what was that? What made you say, maybe I'm going to go back to being on stage rather than writing for it?
I think that play was bad, but it was thrilling to see people, to hear people reading my words and to see it come to life. And the process of going from sitting, I don't sit at home usually. I go to coffee shops generally to write. And so, but that process, you're sitting alone with strangers around you drinking coffee and also writing, because we're in Los Angeles and everyone is writing at the coffee shop. And then you work on it. It's all in your head. You are just hearing these voices. And then what I do generally to make myself finish something is I will say, I need to be done by this date. And then I will send an email to 5 friends and I will say, can you come over to my place on Thursday the 10th to read a play? I will not be done with the play when I send that email, but knowing that I've got 5 people coming over on Thursday the 10th, I better be done. I better have something for them to read. So that generally will be my first draft. And then I'll hear it. It'll be raw. It'll be rough. There'll be embarrassing things in the play that I don't want anyone to read, but you have to push through that embarrassment. You have to push through knowing that some of it is going to be bad, because hearing it is the next thing that helps you figure out what you need to do to make it good.
So you kind of throw yourself under the bus.
A little, yeah.
And when you do that, do you know where it's going to go, or do you I don't care where it's going to go. I'm just going to force it out, and then whatever comes out, and then I'll apologize later.
Yeah. So many writers and I'm on TikTok and I have an account called Your Daily Writing Prompt. And so I talk to a lot of writers from TikTok, and I also teach playwriting classes. So I talk to a lot of writers and I talk to a lot of beginning writers. And is that...
That's the air conditioner. It happens all the time.
No worries,
Otherwise, we're going to be melting and we're both going to be sweating, and it's going to be embarrassing.
Good. But I talk to a lot of writers, especially beginning writers, who are just so afraid to share their work, right? And they want it to be perfect. They want to really, really make sure that it's everything it's supposed to be before they show it to anyone. And they are robbing themselves of important parts of the process. When you just let yourself say, you have to be kind of vulnerable and say, this is not perfect. It's not stage ready, but hearing it and getting some just general feedback from trusted friends so my first step is generally I will invite some people over and read it, and then I will hear so much from that first reading. I don't outline at first. I outline later.
Interesting. Okay.
And so generally with a play, I also write screenplays. I outline my screenplays. I feel like that's a different beast, and you kind of have to know where you're going. But with plays, I like for the play to find itself. And so I generally have an idea. Maybe I know a twist ahead of time. Maybe I know that I'm building towards this moment. I have some ideas for some characters, and then I start writing. And often because, and other people will tell you, don't start without an outline because you're going to do so much more writing. You're going to do so much more work, right? But I feel like when I am outlining, then I know it's going to go here, it's going to go here, and it's going to go here. But if I don't outline, I open myself up to so much more possibility, and the play ends up going to places that I never would have predicted or planned. And it ends up being so much more exciting. And then so that first read, when I've got 5 friends over and we're sitting around reading it, often I don't know what the play actually is until after I've sat down and heard it. And then sometimes there'll be a huge revelation for me as a writer, and I'll say, oh my God, that's what I'm writing about. And then I'll say, okay, wait. Well, then if that's what this is, then the ending has to be this. And that means I need to set that up in this way, and I need to go back and, this scene is not necessary at all. And we need a new beginning. We need this. And so that first draft that I hear read out loud often does not resemble the final version at all.
You said up until that point, you don't know what you're writing about. So if you don't know what you're writing about when you sit down to write, where's that idea coming from?
Sometimes it'll be, I wrote this play called Sick that was done at the LATC. It was produced by Playwrights Arena. And I was sitting, this is such a random story, but I was in London. I went to go see a screening of some movie, and I didn't have a ticket. And I went, they were sold out, and so I went early, and I just sat for like 4 hours in front of this theater, hoping I would get in. And I'm sitting there, and I had a book, I had a journal, and I'm watching, people watching, and I see this man kind of like, he seems drunk. It's 4:00 in the afternoon, and he's kind of wobbling around, and he's screaming at cars, obscenities, and just like really, really belligerent. And then I see a couple, a man and a woman with a 10-year-old kid. And they've clocked this guy. And, is he dangerous? Like, what's going on? And then they walk over to him and they give him a muffin. And they talk to him for a few minutes, and I can't hear them talking.
Sure.
And then they all walk away together as a unit. And I then have 2 more hours to wait for this, this show I'm waiting to see. And I sat there and I just kept thinking, like, well, what is their relationship? What is that? Right. And so then I started taking some notes, and I thought, maybe what if that woman is his sister, and she knew, and someone called and said, oh, your brother's, drunk again. He's yelling at people, and come get your brother. And so they have come because someone has notified them, and they watched him, they clocked him for a while, and then they know he's drunk, he needs some food, they give him the muffin, and then they take him home. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And then I wrote that scene, and I still didn't know what the play was, but like that, and that ended up being the first scene of this play, Sick. That play ultimately was about a mother, and it's this woman who goes and finds her brother, but it's a mother who's a hypochondriac. And I don't know what your thoughts on hypochondria are. As a former hypochondriac, as someone who's still a bit of a hypochondriac, I think of hypochondria as a form of narcissism, because when you are a hypochondriac, you think about yourself constantly. You think about, like, it's all of these fears about things that are going on inside your body that are not real. And in order to be a good parent, you have to always be looking outward, and hypochondriacs only look inward. And so the idea of that play, Sick, is you've got this mother who's a hypochondriac who is narcissistic and just only thinks inward, and then her 10-year-old son gets sick. And then so she has to learn to look outward and be there for her kid. Mm-hmm. And this uncle character ends up being someone who is kind of a bridge between the two of them and helps her. But when I was sitting on the side of this theater waiting to get tickets and observed this scene, I didn't know any of that. But just so plays kind of, I feel like, will come to me in moments that I feel like, oh, that's theatrical, there's something there. And then I'll write and I'll write and I'll write and I'll find the play.
Okay. You mentioned prompts. I'm sorry, is that the...
Yeah, Your Daily Writing Prompt is my TikTok.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you use prompts for yourself when it comes to writing?
I do. In fact, I have a book series of writing prompts. I've written I've written 8 books of writing prompts that have been published. Some I self-published and some were published by Simon & Schuster.
Okay, great.
And I do. I think that there's a lot of really, really bad prompts out there. And I think I'm really good at coming up with prompts. So I will use my own. But yeah, I find it.
Where do you gather your prompts? Or where do they come from? Where do you draw them from?
I think of here's a little idea or here's a question. Like, what if you had a scene where a character is hungry and they go to a friend and they need something from them, but their hunger is getting in the way of the thing they need. I try to come up with prompts for people that are vague enough that you can use it for whatever story you were working on. I don't find any inspiration from prompts when they're so specific.
Sure.
That it's like, well, yeah, I wrote that, but what am I going to do with that? Like, I like to create prompts that leave room for you. That then, if you were writing a love story, you could maybe like put this into that, or if you were writing a horror comedy, you could put this into that possibly.
Is there a...
And the idea generally for me is like a good writing prompt should just be, it's a writing exercise that gets you thinking about your characters. It might not ever be something that would go into what you were working on, but the hardest thing of writing is sitting down and looking at that blank screen, right? And like getting the engine warmed up. And so I think a good writing prompt gets you thinking about a character, and then maybe you write for 10, 15 minutes, and then like, okay, there's something that I hadn't thought about that character, and now I can jump back into what I was writing yesterday.
So your prompts necessarily don't have a formula. And what I mean by that is like, like there's the 24-hour or 48-hour playwright, festivals where it's just like, okay, here's an object, I don't know what it is, a situation, and I don't know what they are usually.
Right,
There's usually like 3 different things that make up, but you don't have you develop prompts, or you don't have anything specific that that's formulaic.
I mean, it's questions generally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My prompts aren't going to give you the beginning, middle, and end of something. And,
sure.
It's generally about like helping you tap into that creative energy.
Are there questions that you always think are necessary in playwriting? I
mean, like the very basics. What's your character want? What do they need? What are the obstacles getting in their way?
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to go back a little bit because we were talking about, I'm going to gather some friends and we're going to read.
Oh, yeah.
Who encompasses your writing group? And I don't mean like specifics. I mean, are there certain people? Is it other writers? Is it actors? Are they other directors? Are they people that have nothing to do with theater because you want an outside ear? I'm curious that.
So I have a formal writing group that I have been with. There's 8 of us, and we have been meeting for 22 years. And 22 years ago when we started meeting up, we met once a week. And then, it's been 22 years. We've gone through phases where it's like everyone's very busy and a bunch of people had kids. And so then maybe it was every other month. Now we're kind of 22 years in. We're like twice a month. We're about every other week, which is great. And the way we kind of do it is we love hanging out, and we are good friends. And so if you have something to read, you read it. If no one brought anything to read, then we have some wine and we hang out and we gab for 2 hours, and then we maybe talk a little bit about what are you thinking about, what are you working on,
sure.
And then we leave. And then everyone will say, next time I'm bringing pages. I promise to bring pages.
It's always the case.
But so I have that formal group. We do a retreat once a year, every June. We go to Palm Springs and we all bring a play to read, and we do like a 3 or 4 day retreat. And there's 8 of us, so we'll read 2 to 3 plays a day. and we just cast it amongst ourselves and read it out loud, and then talk about it. We
this is each other's own work. It's
our
not
own work.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah. And so that's the formal group, but then I also the informal gatherings that I put together to hear it are generally, you know, I've been working in theater for 20 something years. I know a lot of actors, so I just will message a bunch of actors and say, hey, come on, let's get together. But it's generally actors when it's writers when I'm doing when it's the formal group, and then it's actors there. And I'll do that multiple times for a play. I like to hear it. You know, I think you learn so much. So before I send a script to anyone in a formal way, I'll have heard it maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times.
And you don't participate in those readings of your own work. I mean, obviously,
I'll read the stage directions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you want, or what do you expect from feedback?
I expect a few compliments. Okay. You know, I think of it as it's the compliment sandwich. You start with something nice, and then you get into like, these are the things I'm thinking, this is what I heard, and then you end with something nice. But I try not to be prescriptive when I'm giving notes, and I don't necessarily want you, unless I tell you, I don't know what this is, like, tell me something, you know, like, be prescriptive. Sure. Yeah. But in general, you know, like, what are the questions that you have? What does the play mean to you? You know, like, what are you taking away? I feel like a successful play, you walk out of the theater and then you say to your friends who you're with, do you want to go get a drink? Do you want to go get to some dessert? Like, let's go down the street to this place. They're open late. And then those people talk about the play for a while, right? That's a successful play. A play that is bad, you walk out and you say, well, great to see you. Thanks so much. You know, I'll talk to you later. Bye, everyone. And they don't have anything to talk about.
Well, but don't they? Because, I mean, doesn't that, some of that still, like a bad play, doesn't that warrant a let's go down the street?
The truth is a really bad play. You go down the street and you're like, what the fuck is that? Like, can you believe, like, how dare they put that on stage and have no conflict? Or how dare they put that on stage and think that we're so stupid that I will come out against a very popular franchise. Sure. I get very mad at the play that goes wrong plays. Yeah. Do you know those plays?
I've never seen any of them. I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, because it's probably one of the originals. It's not a play that goes. And I've only seen the film version. I'm not a fan of Noises Off. I just don't think it's a great play.
So but here's the thing about Noises Off. They have backstory, and you know who those people are.
Sure. Okay.
And the play that goes wrong is just the jokes about the stage breaking without knowing anything about the characters.
Right.
And so you're just laughing at people falling down. It is an extended episode of, you know, America's Funniest Home Video on stage. And I've seen there's because there's a whole franchise now. There's like 5 of them. The Peter Pan goes wrong, the mystery that goes wrong, the whatever that goes wrong. And I saw one of them. I saw the first one, and people were rolling on the floor laughing. Like, everyone around me was laughing. And I found it so upsetting, because I need comedy grounded in character and story, and not just a pratfall for pratfall's sake.
But do you feel that that's just a marketing gimmick then? It's like, what, you know?
Totally. And I don't begrudge anyone who loves those shows. Sure. If you're gonna, if that's what you love, we should be living a life full of joy, right? Like, so go to that and enjoy that. Yeah. That, to me, does not feed my soul in any way.
Right. Because we kind of got into you going into playwriting and teaching playwriting. So, you know, what do you get from your students as far as playwriting goes? When we talked about, we know a bad play is, and I'm not begrudging your students by any means, but I think that beginning playwrights, you really learn a lot, because it's like, oh boy, don't do that.
Yeah.
But what kind of habits do you find that you have to break them of? as beginning and emerging playwrights?
I think, and I teach 2 playwriting classes. I teach a beginning playwriting class, and the things I'm going to say are generally from that beginning class.
Sure.
And I teach an ongoing class that are people who took the beginning class, who had a lot of promise and are good writers and really like took a lot from what I gave them, and I saw the growth, and I invited them to take the ongoing class. And so I feel like that class is such a joy to teach, because it is writers who are experimenting and trying things and growing, and I read their pages, and then the class ends and I want to go write because I'm excited by having read exciting scenes. I think some of the things that I see often in some of the beginning plays, sometimes when you just look at the page and it's huge chunk of dialogue after huge chunk of dialogue after huge chunk of dialogue, people don't really talk like, no one talks like that. And there's no rhythm, there's no flow. It's just this person is saying every thought they need to say, and then this person is saying every thought they need to say, and you read it and it's deadly. That is one thing. I find I personally am of the school of less is more in terms of stage directions,
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that obviously there are incredible playwrights that write a lot of stage directions, and I think that it used to be more in vogue to be more heavy with the stage directions. You look at an O'Neill play, and there's 5 pages of stage directions before you even get to the first line of dialogue. I'm never going to do that personally, and I try to steer people away from being too prescriptive in that way. Especially when it comes to describing movement and, the character, like often I will see beginning playwrights write, Tom walks upstage to the window. I'm like, sure. You don't know where that window's going to be. Let the designer to figure out where that window is. And also, just say they go to the window. You don't need to say they go upstage to the window, things like that. But I do, and that actually comes from, the Samuel French versions of the acting editions of scripts will have the stage manager's notes.
And I didn't know that until I started doing this podcast, that I didn't realize that stage directions were from the stage.
It's the stage manager's notes, but a lot of playwrights learn to do that from reading those Samuel French copies of plays, and so I try to get that out of stop doing that. Right.
On that note, on how do you, when you're trying to get them to stop that, how do you remedy the overwritten dialogue? What's your cure for that when it's just like, oh my gosh, you don't, is it just...
I mean, there's a very simple, have them interrupt each other, have them cut people off.
Sure, but I mean, like how do you, if it's already written, and I don't mean this is how you fix that, but if you've got 2 paragraphs, and only 2 of those lines are really worthy, I mean, do you just sit there and say, do you say go back through and find out the important stuff and that's what you keep, or is it just let's edit it now, go back and fix this and bring it back? I'm just curious.
I'm not going to edit for them.
Sure.
But I'll say, go in, look for what's important, and trim.
Yeah.
And I love a monologue too. But you have to earn it.
And okay, on that note,
it's not monologue.
100%. So let me ask you that, because I've asked it a couple times, and I don't know the answer to it, and I'm not the biggest fan of them because I don't know when's the time for a monologue.
I think the time for a monologue is when a character has so much to say that they can't not say it.
Okay.
And I think it's kind of an instinctive thing. It has to feel like there's something here that needs to come out. Sure.
Okay. You mentioned that you with your beginning classes and you get, I don't know if you said inspired, but your students are trying things, they're trying new things. What is that? Do you have an example of trying something? Is that for instance, Tony Kushner throwing angel on crashing through the, is that the kind of instances you're talking about?
Yeah, sure. Like, I was reading this one play recently that one of my students had written that had no stage directions whatsoever. And it was just these two women talking, and it was all very staccato, very short dialogue. And it really had this great rhythm. And I read it, and it just kind of, this flow, and her dialogue was really interesting and kind of weird. And yeah, I was like, oh, there's like a special sauce, and then just, when you read good things, when you see good things, you get inspired. Like, that's why I always tell my students, read more and watch more.
Okay.
Because it'll make you want to write.
That piece, for instance, was there, if you can remember, not that it matters, I'm just curious because you're talking about this flow. And in that flow of dialogue, especially if it's, whether it's staccato or just like, quick one or two words to make up that line, were there stage directions sprinkled in there as well? Or is it just like
very little stage directions? Okay. And she just built this very interesting dynamic. It was two friends who, one of them, early on, like, you realize that one of them had not stood up for the other one at this party, and like, so there was this subtext going on of this possible rift between these two characters, but they're best friends, and you're seeing them try to maintain their status quo, but then there's these other things going on. It was a really good play.
Interesting.
Got me excited.
I want to go back a little bit to the beginning of the conversation when we were talking about Durang and whatnot, and you're talking about bringing humor to serious situations. How do you do that? How does one achieve?
Well, first of all, I will just say that, I so many of the things that my Fucking Strangers is about an agoraphobic, 30-year-old agoraphobic man who only connects to people on the internet, and that is his kind of sole access point to the world. And it also follows a closeted man who is having an affair with a escort, and it follows this woman who wanted to be an artist when she was younger, and then got married and didn't pursue her dreams, and is now in her 50s and feeling like life has passed her by. And so you've got all of these characters who feel lost, and who feel like, and that's like, all of those situations are heavy, right?
Sure.
And I personally, I love to cry at the theater, and I love to laugh at the theater. And if I'm going to see something that's just heavy, that I'm going to like, I can be satisfied by that. I don't think Death of a Salesman is a laugh riot. I can't
until you add the laugh track.
Right. But like, so obviously, like, that's its own thing. I don't write that type of play. Like, sure. I like to find those moments where we have some relief and where we can laugh, and I think those laughs earn the heavy, help you earn the heavier moments as well. But how do you do that? I think you look for
what comes first. Let me ask you that, and not to interrupt, because I don't want to pull you away from that thought. But does the subject matter and the heaviness come first, and then where can I put humor in?
It's not even necessarily looking for like, where's the joke, where's the humor?
Sure, no,
it's really, it's like, where's the humanity, and where's the like moment where this person is, says the embarrassing thing, or has the like there's, I'm trying to think of like some specifics from Fucking Strangers. They're Rue, who's agoraphobic, strikes up this relationship online with this gay escort, and Rue feels very awkward. Rue has not left the house in 6 years. Like, there's a lot of issues that Rue has, and does not feel beautiful, does not feel this and that, and he's talking to this person who he describes as like, and the guy says to him, like, you're very attractive. Like and he says, well, I mean, and Rue says to him, you know, you're very sexy. And he says, oh, am I? I don't know. And Rue's like, you're a professional sexy person. Don't act like you're not sexy. Like that's your job. And like just finding those moments of connection, like, and, you know, it gets a laugh because, but the two of them, like just on paper or just describing the scene, it's not a Durang play, you know. It's not a farce. It's like two people going through real things. Right. But yeah, like a funeral can be very funny, right? You have to laugh in some of those moments, you know. Like,
at what point in your, so you graduated?
Yeah.
And then what's your next step? Do you automatically, obviously you keep writing. At what point do you start submitting your stuff?
So I graduated from Oxy, and then I had worked with a director who was working at the Actors Gang, and which is Tim Robbins' theater company. Right. At the time they were in Hollywood, now they're in Culver City. And she invited me as an actor to be part of a summer acting workshop that they were doing that was like an invite-only thing that was with the company, and then some outside people they invited in. It was very, very cool. And so the summer after I graduated from college, I spent 3 months pretty much every day from like 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the Actors Gang doing acting workshops and reading other people's work. And I was also working on some plays and just also just being surrounded by that environment and so many creative people. It was a very, very fertile moment for me. And I think I was writing like 2 different plays at the same time while I was doing these acting workshops. And I started just going to see theater all over town and getting to know people at all the various different theaters. And I would volunteer at theaters and you know, volunteer to be an usher and things like that, and just try to get to know people at various theaters. And I had written this play that I really wanted to do something with, and I wanted to self-produce it. And so I was kind of making friends at various theaters across town. And I asked someone at the Actors Gang if I could have the theater space for a weekend or even like a couple off nights to do a reading or a workshop of one of my plays. And you know, they rented their space out, but it was very expensive. And I was, you know, 20 years old and didn't have the money to do that. And so I said, is there any way that you guys could give me the theater for a few nights? And they said, well, actually, we are looking for a stage manager for one of our upcoming shows. We'll give you the theater for a week for free if you stage manage this show for 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, it was a huge commitment, but it was great. And it was a great deal for me as a 20-year-old. And I also learned so much and got to work on this show. And so I stage managed this show for free for them for 2 months. And then they gave me the theater for a week, and I had it all day, had it all evening, and we rehearsed, and then we put on, I think, 2 workshopped performances of this play, not Mammy Rammer. It was my second or third, or maybe it was my third or fourth play. And then I invited everyone who I had met at all of the other theaters that I had been going to check things out at, and I just, like, anyone who I had even said hello to, I invited to this workshop. And then this woman, Rebecca Gray, came to one of the readings. She's a wonderful actor, and she said, I would love to give this play to my theater company, which was Theater of Note. Okay. And she said, "Can I?"
Who was that?
Her name's Rebecca Gray.
Okay.
And she ended up. She's acted in a few plays of mine now, but I said, absolutely, give this play to your theater company, and then her theater company read it, and then they ended up producing it, and then that was my first professional production, was at Theater of Note. But it was kind of like I made the situation happen by just getting to know people, and I don't even think of it as networking, like I love theater, and I got to know people at various theaters and befriended people. And so then they came to this reading that only happened because I'd stage managed and worked out that kind of like bartering deal. But that led to my first play.
Eventually, did you start submitting, or have you kind of kept everything local? Not that either one's a bad thing. I'm just kind of curious because if the opportunities are local and you can keep that
I would say
momentum going, it doesn't. Why?
Most of my playwriting career has been local and has been here. I worked with Theater of Note for a very long time. They've done 5 plays of mine. I'm now on my 3rd play with Echo, and Echo is like my current new theater home. I've had development things outside of town. A bunch of things developed in New York. I had a big reading of the newer play of mine last year in New York that I'm still trying to make something happen with. So, but I'm really bad at submitting. I'm sure you've talked to. I know you've talked to. I don't know how many playwrights you've talked to. I'm sure some people I'm sure are very, very good at it. I kind of just get busy doing my stuff and forget to it's something about I don't know, it's the executive function part of my brain that doesn't want to sit and do it's the monotony of sending things out, because I do think you have to get those regional productions, you got to send to a million places to get
but at the same time we're talking about for lack of a better word, necessity. And it doesn't sound like you have that necessity. If your opportunities are here, why. And I think that and we don't have to delve into this and unpack it by any means, but I think that everybody's got their different levels of success. And if you found your success, which is huge in a town like LA, and I think you can still have a huge level of success in small towns and smaller markets just as much. But if you can find one somewhere like in LA, Los Angeles, Chicago, I think you're still, not to, just on that note, no pun intended on the theater note. It was Bill Smith, just for what it's worth, if you did decide to take that route. If you haven't gotten to that episode since you do occasionally listen, he has got this thing called the Drama Desk that keeps track of all your submissions and whether or not
cool.
it sounds like an amazing thing. And I don't write enough to get to, but it seems like it's a great tool. You should. Yeah. So the one thing because I'm fascinated by the approach that you've taken, or not that you took, it just seems like it kind of fell into place. So for somebody who might want to take, the Erik Patterson, pathway, how do you avoid coming off desperate? I have, oh, you're a director. Oh, you're a producer. I'm talking more in the film industry. How people I got a screenplay. Yeah. But how do you do that if you're interning at a space or something like that? At what point do you introduce, hey, I write, or, introduce that, hey, do you have a dark weekend, during the holidays or whatnot? I don't know. How do you avoid, being desperate or sounding desperate?
I think that people like people who are making things, right? In that specific circumstance, I was not waiting for someone to do something for me. I said it was Mark Seldes was the managing director of the Actors Gang at the time. And I think I just got to know him from this summer of doing these acting workshops, and just casually said to Mark, I have this play, I want to put it up, are there any nights on the calendar that it's open? And he saw the opportunity because he knew he needed a stage manager, and it worked out.
Sure.
But I'm not randomly going up to people and saying, hey, put this on, or, read this.
Do you think that that's a much better approach than say, hey, read my work, rather than, hey, let me, propose my own opportunity? It's like, hey, I'm going to do my, if you have a dark night, I'll do this.
Yeah.
And then hopefully something comes of it, rather than hey, read my play. And then, give me,
I think that if you know more than just like read my play,
right.
if you have like, and then this and this and this, like you have a plan, you have an idea that people are going to respond to more than just, okay, I read your play, now what? Right. Or if there's an opportunity, they're looking for scripts, obviously submit it and give it to them.
Right. Well, I think, and that's kind of the thing. Where was I going with that? You had said something where it was like really hit it, and I think having that plan, and that's what it was. It was like you had said that you weren't going to wait for permission, and I think that, and we've gone over this so many times in so many episodes in the past, that I think that that's the problem with young emerging playwrights, or just I think theater and acting all together, that they just kind of think that somebody else has to give them permission to do it, rather than just make their own opportunities rather.
Absolutely. And then also, when you are making your own opportunities, then people get to know your work, and then people get excited, and then people want to know, well, what's the next thing? And then they're asking you to read your next play, rather than you saying, would you read my next play? Right? When they know your work, and they like your work, then you're creating fans who are excited to like maybe be involved in the next thing.
And so once you got past, you had your first thing at Theater of Note, and then how did you start getting involved with like, Echo and things like that? It was just like word of mouth and stuff.
Yeah, word of mouth. I got to know people, and I, my writing group that I mentioned, that came out of all the people in that group I met I was in the Taper Writers group. Okay. And I think like 2026, like 2003, I think. Sure. And that writing group, I think, still exists. They have a cohort every year. Right. And two of the writers that are in this group that I'm in 22 years later, I met in that group. But someone from the Taper saw my play at Note and invited me to be part of the Taper group. And then I got involved with the Echo through their cohort, through their group. They bring together, I think, 6 writers every year, and they work on a play for a year, and then they do readings at the end of the year. And I don't even remember who invited me into that group, but like people see your work and then they say, oh, we have a group, come be part of it.
And so what was the catalyst? And is that part of the momentum that got Fucking Strangers into this? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what was that like? Was that just an opening, or because I know that?
Well, Fucking Strangers was commissioned by the Echo. So the Echo.
This was part of their commission season.
Well, so the first play of mine they did was One of the Nice Ones, and One of the Nice Ones came out of being in the cohort at the Echo, and so at the end of that year, I think there were 8 of us. We had a weekend of play readings. And we read One of the Nice Ones, and Chris Fields, the artistic director, after the reading, he walked over to me and he said, we're doing this play. I love this play. We're doing it. And then they did it next season. And then I became a part of the theater company and got to know everyone. And that production was very, very successful. That was 2016. And then 2019, I had written Hand Job and gave it to Chris, and he read it and loved it and said, we're doing this play next season. And so those just kind of, that's how those two happened. And then this play, Fucking Strangers, I was having coffee with Chris, and I pitched him just this idea for a play that I had. And he said, well, you that play's great. You got to write that play and then give it to me. And I really genuinely did not have time to write that play. It was just kind of an off the cuff, like, here's an idea that I'm thinking about, but I don't know. And then I told him, I was like, well, I'll write it someday, but I'm working on this screenplay. I'm working on that. I'm doing this. And then he called me the next day and he said, would you write it? I want to commission that play. Would you write it if I did that? And I said, sure. Yes. And then the kind of like weird journey of this play, I ended up not writing that play that he had commissioned. Okay. Because it just, I don't know. Sometimes there are some ideas that I just think take a little longer to percolate, and I still like that idea, but that idea it's still percolating.
Sure.
And Fucking Strangers has had this kind of strange path. So I had written a very different version of this play 10 years ago. A friend of mine, we were hanging out, and she's an actor, and she said to me, I've always wanted to do a play where that I get to do some kind of sexy stuff, and then I want to dance, I want to do this, I want to do that. And she just was kind of like, she rattled off, like, I want to do this in a play, this in a play, this in a play, and this in a play. And speaking of prompts like that, sure. I jotted down, I was like, ooh, that's a fun list of ingredients. And I said, I'm going to write that play for you. And she said, go for it, amazing. And so I wrote this play using this list of ingredients, and it was about a woman who was agoraphobic. And we ended up doing a few readings of this play. It never really worked. And I knew that I had not cracked this play. Mm-hmm. And then I put it aside. And that was like 10 years ago. And then when I was working on this commission for Echo, I'm trying to write this other play, and the other play is not coming to me. And I started thinking about the idea of the other play. And I realized I had been writing a play about a gay man, but because my friend was a woman, I'd written a play about a woman who was agoraphobic, and the reason it didn't work was because the play was not about that character. Right. And so then I wrote the play again with this other character in mind, and then the play it all kind of fell into place.
Interesting.
And then I gave that play to Chris. And again, we did a reading of it, and Chris likes to hear plays, so I don't think he had read it ahead of time. We got some actors together, and we read it, and then he turned to me and he said, we're doing this next season.
And I want to go into just a little bit of the, not the process, the journey into that once it got into, but when it comes to commissions, are there requirements or guidelines, or is it just like, I like the premise, go? And this is your.
So I'll be totally frank. Anyone listening to this, if you want to commission me, I want more commissions. So I've only had 2 commissions, and they were both fairly different experiences. But I in both circumstances, I was given a lot of freedom.
Okay.
And one, it was a producer told me that they were looking for they had a few things that they wanted. They wanted a small, large cast.
Okay.
They said we want something that's under 10 characters, but it can be a big size. They wanted something that was set in the 70s or the 80s. They want because for design elements, they had certain things that they that they knew they wanted, but then they said whatever within that realm.
Okay, so they gave you some parameters.
Yeah, and they knew my work, and I often write about messed up people who were trying to get their shit together, and they said do one of those, and here's some parameters. Like with the Echo, I pitched them a log line. I pitched them a very basic idea. They said, we love that, go forward. And then I think I had a year went by, and they said, how's the play coming? And I said, it's really not, I'm struggling with it. And they said, just write anything. We just want one of your plays.
Nice.
Which is
it's a good place to be.
Yeah.
So once Chris heard it, Fucking Strangers, and you guys start the rehearsal process, how's the playwriting aspect of this been going up to this point? And is it still evolving?
So we open in 2 weeks.
Right.
I think I'm done with big changes.
Okay. All right. And what when you say big changes, what are we talking about? What does that entail? What's the biggest change you had to do?
When we started rehearsals, we spent several days doing table work, and reading the play, and I think that endings are the last thing to come for me.
Okay.
Endings, I feel like, always evolve and change. I think endings are hard. And when we started rehearsals, I knew that the ending wasn't totally right. We did some development. We had done a reading. We did a public reading in December, and there was a moment that the audience gasped. Like there was a big moment about 2/3 of the way towards the end where something happens and there's a surprise, and there was an audible reaction. And I realized that what happens in that moment, without giving it away, was there was an excitement of, oh, that means that X is going to happen. Now that we know this, we know and we're anticipating that X is coming. And I realized I haven't really done like that the X moment is not satisfying enough for the anticipation that I could feel people were feeling. And the reason it wasn't satisfying enough was it was rushed. And so when we started working on when we were in rehearsals, we're going through that moment, and I realized, like, oh, this is a 2-page scene that should be 6 pages. You know, like we need to live in this moment because the audience is excited for that moment. The audience wants that moment, and it goes like that. So I wrote a new version of that scene. I expanded it. I brought it in. We read it. I heard that, like, okay, it's better, but it doesn't totally work. I went home that night. I rewrote it entirely again, brought in 6 new pages the next day. And I think we did that for like 5 days. And so I had them at my beck and call, you know, like all right, I've got my actors. I know they're going to be there tomorrow. And so we would reread the scene. And then it got to the point where it finally was working.
When you said you have to, 2 pages, we got to make it 6. Now,
Yeah. It's not a mathematical, like, I just meant that, like,
no.
I know it's not explored enough. Yeah.
No, and that's what I mean. Is it like the moment happens, or there is this moment?
Yeah.
Now, are you expanding on that moment, or it's like when you say, I need more from this scene, is it, okay, let me build and get there and let it explode?
I'll give you a little more without giving it away.
Sure. Okay, fair enough.
You know that 2 people are going to meet.
Okay.
And when those 2 people met, I realized, like, people, they really want this moment to happen. And it happens too quickly, and we're not living in that moment long enough. Okay. And
so you're expanding on the moment, not building into the moment. That's not really it.
No, it was really about, like, well, what are these 2 people going to say to each other now that these 2 people are talking?
Sure. All right. And then...
and it took a little while to find that, like...
Sure.
Maybe it's this way, maybe it's that, and yeah.
And so all the big stuff's done. Do you find that... actually, that's what I wanted to ask is, outside of the and the gasps and the whatnot, when you did that audience reading or audience, was there audience feedback that you also took in, or did you just pull from audience reaction?
There was no formal feedback. There was no talk back.
That's what I wanted.
But 2 of the writers from my writing group were there.
Okay.
And we went off into the courtyard and had some, like, great conversation. Okay. And I took a bunch of notes after. And I remember sitting there. It was like the first public reading of this play. Mm-hmm. And I had my notebook, my journal, and my pen, and I was listening and hearing, like, oh, that's not working. So I took like 10 pages of notes while I was watching. And so I had plenty to work with after that. But yeah, I got some good feedback from a few people.
Do you anticipate any small changes that are going to be coming up in the next 2 weeks before you open?
Yeah, I think it's not locked until we open, and I think some writers would talk to Tony Kushner. He'll say, you win the Pulitzer. He's still rewriting that play.
Wow.
But yeah, I think once we open, as far as I'm concerned, it's locked. You do want to be a little, like, gracious to your actors and not be throwing huge things at that. Like I was trying, I wanted to be done with it, 2 weeks ago. I gave them, I think, one big new thing a day or two ago. And I do think that's the last big thing I'm going to do. But I'm there. I like to go to rehearsal. I like to listen. I'll be listening. Now it's like finessing. Sure, it's like, okay, wait, no, they've said that twice. We only need to hear that once. Like, or that word is wrong. It's really finessing at this point.
Sure. Nitpicky.
Yeah.
What are you working on right now? Writing wise, outside of nitpicky and finessing fucking strangers. What are you working on?
A lot of things. I just finished a second draft of a play that I'm very, very excited about. Okay. I have a play that I wrote a year ago that I did. I had this reading in New York about a year ago. And, we were just talking about endings. I learned from that reading that it has the wrong ending. And that has been on my to-do list to like really go in and write. It's a 3-act play. And I feel like act 3 is just wrong. And so I need to rewrite act 3. But I just finished this second draft of a new play. And then I'm going to go in and rewrite act 3 of this other new play. And I generally am working on like 4 or 5 things at the same time.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And where can people find your work outside of Fucking Strangers, opening July 18th, the Echo Theater Company in Los Angeles and running through August 24th? Where can people find your work?
Okay, so come see Fucking Strangers.
Yes, absolutely. And we will also include the ticket link in the show notes below.
Excellent. I also have a play. Can I say the title of the other play?
Of course. Is this the one that we're talking about at Theater of Note?
The one at Theater of Note, yes. I have a play called Faggots in Love at Theater of Note.
That's what it was. I was thinking it was Faggots in Paradise. I don't know why.
Yeah, and that's an evening of 15-minute plays. There's 7. Oh God, I'm going to not remember everyone's names, but it's Kirsten Vangsness, Adam Simkowitz, Finney Kayamoro, June Carroll, Steve Yockey, me, Jacqueline Wright. Okay. I think that's everyone. Maybe I forgot one person, and my apologies.
I count 7 fingers.
I counted 7 fingers. Yeah, thank you. Okay. So that's an evening of 1 act. It's just 2 weekends, and that opens the weekend after Fucking Strangers opens. I also have this series of writing prompt books that were published through Simon & Schuster that you can get at bookstores anywhere. Write a romantasy, write a dystopian novel, and write a horror novel. Those 3 books are available. Several of my plays are published, and you can find them on Amazon if you just look up my name. I also host a gently guided writing sprint every Wednesday and every Sunday through my Patreon, and it's on Zoom, and we write silently. I give a writing prompt every 15 minutes, but there's no feedback, there's no critique. It's just kind of like a body doubling exercise. It's a lot of fun.
And that's open to the public as long as they join your Patreon.
It's $5 a month, and anyone can join on my Patreon. Yeah. Okay.
And then finally, and I already know the answer to it, are you on the socials?
Yes, I am on TikTok at Your Daily Writing Prompt. I'm on Instagram at Erik Ross Patterson. That's it.
Well, Erik Ross Patterson, thank you for coming on to this episode of Playwright Spotlight.
It was great talking to you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, and until we see each other again, keep writing.